is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with another video. As we all know, in comparison to the AFC, the NFC is an extremely weak conference, but in both conferences, we really don't know who's going to come out on top. I personally think that the New Orleans Saints are in perfect position to take over a conference that's pretty much considered no man's land in my mind at this point, and I have three different reasons that I want to cover as to why I believe the Saints will be that team to take over. You guys know how I get down with my Mott's applesauce around here, but I want to ask you, who do you think is going to be taking over the NFC next season? I know the top teams that probably still come to mind are the Rams, the Bucks, maybe even the Packers. The Vikings, I think, are in there as a sleeper team. But I think the Saints have a more than realistic chance to take this thing back to New Orleans, starting with point 1 of 3. Going back to last season, let's evaluate what happened with the New Orleans Saints, because it was not a bad season for the circumstances they endured. Last season, the Saints finished 9-8, second in the NFC South, and just missed out in a postseason spot. Their defense was a major player in what I would consider a relatively successful season last year. They finished 4th in the NFL in points again, considering they went into 2021 with the 8th toughest strength of schedule and an offense that really did not help them for like 2/3 of the entire season. I would consider that a major victory for that defense. They also swept the Buccaneers for the second consecutive season. Ever since Tom Brady arrived in Tampa Bay, the Saints have beat them every time. So they've played 4 games against each other, the Saints and the Bucks have. The Saints have beaten Tom Brady's Buccaneers each and every game. I don't know what it is. I don't know what curse the Saints have over Tom Brady, but they have his number. But what makes this ultra impressive is the fact that, as I mentioned, the offense didn't help that defense very much at all last season, but that was because they were without Jameis Winston for about 2/3 of the season. And if you count the game in which Jameis Winston got injured in, which was the first matchup that they played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Trevor Siemian stepped in and ended up winning the game for him, then the New Orleans Saints, without their starting quarterback for the remainder of the year, finished off with 5 wins and 6 losses with a combination of Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian, and Ian Book starting for them at quarterback. I mean, my God, how they didn't finish with 1 or 2 wins with the rest of the stretch ahead of them is beyond me. Not to mention, Jameis Winston wasn't the only thing they didn't have or they ended up losing. I mean, their pass catching unit was horrendous. Without Michael Thomas for the entire year last season, they went 5-6 with a wide receiving core of Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, Deontay Harris, and like Juwan Johnson and Adam Troutman for like 5 games until he got hurt at tight end. And just to make it that much worse, Teron Armstead, one of the best tackles in the entire NFL, only played about 8 games last season. They were injured all over the place on the offensive side of the ball. They did not have much help, and they still were winning football games. Saints in the NFC were kind of like the counterpart to the Ravens in the AFC. I don't think the Saints were nearly as injured as the Ravens were, but both teams were severely depleted, and both teams fought every single second of every game, and they really never got blown out at all. I mean, they were playing some of the best teams in the NFL down to the very last second. I mean, both of these teams competed no matter what the circumstances were. Anyways, getting back on track, to wrap up my first point about the New Orleans Saints, last season they may not have made the playoffs. They may have only went 9-8, but that 9-8 was a hard-fought 9-8 considering the circumstances, and I just imagine if they were a healthy football team for a majority of last year, things would have went a lot different. Alright, now for point number 2, which is the offseason that the New Orleans Saints have had up to this point here in 2022. Every team has its pros and its cons when talking about the offseason. Now, let's quickly talk about the cons that the Saints have had. First being the biggest one, and that's the Alvin Kamara suspension that is ever so looming over their heads. They're probably going to give him about 8 or 9 games. And there's the retirement of Sean Payton, which may be tough for them to make up. And then Teron Armstead, one of their best tackles, or one of the best tackles in the entire NFL, leaving the Saints in free agency to go to the Dolphins. But I do think these cons can be negated. As far as the Alvin Kamara suspension goes, I really don't think that can be negated. I mean, that is one hell of a loss. We all know what Alvin Kamara brings to the table. It's kind of hard to replicate the game he brings. I think the Saints will be able to run the ball effectively still, but he just brings a completely different dimension to the offense that no other player can really provide. So that's going to suck. There's really no negating that one. But the Sean Payton retirement, I think there is negating that. They're just bringing up defensive coordinator Dennis Allen to be the head coach now. Based on some research I've done, it looks like Dennis Allen is still going to have a heavy say in defensive play calling, so I don't really expect a drop off in terms of a defensive standpoint. And losing Teron Armstead sucks, but they didn't have him for 9 games last year anyway, and that's kind of where the pros start to tie in. And, you know, losing Teron Armstead, like I said, that sucks, but they also drafted offensive tackle Trevor Penning with the 19th overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft to replace him. Give the Northern Iowa rookie about 8 or 9 games, and I do fully expect him to be playing offensive tackle full-time for the Saints. I really like like that draft pick, but that was not the only draft pick that the Saints had that is really going to bolster that team. We also have wide receiver Chris Olave out of Ohio State University. I think Chris Olave is going to be the perfect complement to Michael Thomas on the other side of the field. And that ties into my next point. Michael Thomas is finally going to be healthy, or at least he's supposed to be, unless he decides he wants to be a bitch baby and sit on the couch for the entire year. And they also signed wide receiver Jarvis Landry. So they're going from a wide receiver core consisting of Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, and Traquan Smith to a wide receiver core of Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, as well as Michael Thomas. And then, of course, their starting quarterback, Jameis Winston, will be healthy and ready for the 2022 campaign, and I expect a lot of big things from that guy. But that's not where this offseason ends for the Saints. They made a lot of big moves on the defensive side of the ball as well. They brought in 3 different safeties in Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, and Daniel Sorensen. They now have a very deep, very well-rounded secondary. They already did in the first place, but now they got Marshawn Lattimore as well as those 3 guys I just named, although I think Daniel Sorensen sucks and Tyrann Mathieu is a bit overrated. Marcus May is a humongous addition. With Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, that secondary, I expect that defense to pick up right where they left off in 2021 and just get right on a roll in 2022 once again. I think they are one of the most talented teams in the entire NFC, and that wraps up point number 2, bringing us to point number 3, which is pretty much projecting their 2022 campaign. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this conference is pretty much no man's land at this point. There's the couple better teams, but there's really no one dominant big-ass force that's going to run and curb stomp every team in this conference. There's just not. So granted, they once again have the 8th toughest strength of schedule. That has not stopped them in the past. They're an extremely weak division. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are really their only competition, are a team that they seem to have figured out. It's all going to ride on the shoulders of Jameis Winston at the end of the day. How can he perform when he has to perform for this team? Will he be able to come through? I think the answer is yes. The veteran quarterback has been in a number of situations throughout his career, and I think this year is one of the best situations he's ever been a part of. He's going to have so much talent surrounding him, and he's on a team where they really don't have to throw the ball. They're not going to be depending on their quarterback nearly as much. The run game for the Saints is one of the most underrated in the entire NFL. Without Alvin Kamara in the first half of the season, obviously that's going to take a little bit of a hit on that. But I think Jameis Winston finds solace in the fact that he doesn't have to drop back and chuck the ball 40 times a game. Last season, in the 6 or 7 games he played, he had a touchdown interception ratio of 12-3 with 1,200 yards passing. Not a lot of yards, but my God, this dude throwing 12-3 is something unheard of. Jameis Winston is not afraid of taking the deep shot, and he's got the arm to do so. He hit Deontay Harris a couple times last season deep down the field. So, I mean, you're eliminating the opportunities for Jameis Winston to throw the ball, but you establish the play action, you establish the ground game, and Jameis Winston will make you pay over the top. But the bottom line is this. This team is one of the most talented, if not the most talented, in my opinion, in the entire conference. They just have to stay healthy, and Jameis Winston needs to play mistake-free quarterback. If those 2 things happen, which I am projecting them to, they are my favorite to take the NFC top seed, and you're adding Alvin Kamara to the mix halfway through the season. He's going to be healthier than he would be taking hits for the first 8 games. So it's looking like, in my eyes, a perfect storm for the Saints to swoop in and take a no man's land type of conference, and I really like their chances. But let me know down below what you think of my prediction. I'll do more of a record prediction once I do my record predictions for every division like I did last offseason. That will be coming soon. But as always, if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, do all the fun stuff. If you want to hit the bell to be notified when I upload, I'd appreciate that. And go over to Twitter, follow me over there. I'd appreciate that as well. I have a TikTok down in my description that I think you should check out, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.